Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kathy Eldon. I'm located in Malibu in California, and I'm excited to be able to share my story today. It's a real honor to be participating on this particular podcast, and I can't wait to talk to each and every one of you. You'll have to write back. I am really excited. I am someone who grew up in a very ordinary environment in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is the middle of the United States. My town was surrounded by corn, and I couldn't wait to get out and have some adventures. I married at a very young age of around 23 to an Englishman, and I thought I was going to be rescued by the prince. We moved to London and immediately produced a child named Dan Eldon. I was kind of surprised. I didn't anticipate having a baby quite so quickly, but naturally adjusted to motherhood and was terribly excited about the prospect. I had another baby 4 years later named Amy. And at that point, I got a little frustrated, a little tired of being locked away in the suburbs of England. Fortunately, I was rescued yet again, this time by the opportunity to go to Nairobi, Kenya, where my husband was running a computer company. I landed in Nairobi in 1977 at a time when the country was just emerging out of the independence period into a period when people were just like rolling up sleeves and finding solutions to the challenges they faced. And I was no exception. I rolled up sleeves and tackled things I'd never done before, like trying to become a journalist. I audaciously and outrageously talked my way into a job at the Nation newspaper, where I was a freelance journalist in charge of writing stories about people who were doing remarkable things, creative, active people who were themselves rolling up sleeves in a very original way to tackle issues that were challenging to them. I was deeply inspired by these people as I wrote stories about them for the newspaper. Over time, my son, Dan, followed. He came along with me. He became my photographer and took wonderful photographs of the people that I was interviewing. Over time, I wrote books in Kenya. I did 3 eating out guides and 3 cookbooks. I worked with tourist operators, did safari journals, and you name it, I was there doing it. I was terribly excited when my son, Dan, decided that he wanted to be a photojournalist. It was a really interesting time. Actually, it kind of happened a little upside down. Dan was at university in America studying. He would decide to learn something, he'd study it, and then he'd go off and try it out. And then he'd go back to a university. It might have been the same one, it might have been a different one, and really learn something more that he wanted to try out. It was the year was 1991, and Dan was due to go back to UCLA, University of California in Los Angeles, when he heard about the possibility of a terrible famine in Somalia. Dan had been brought up in Africa, and he was really troubled to hear that people might be suffering. So he somehow, together with his friend Adrian, who was a Reuters journalist, managed to get on a flight into Somalia. I don't even know how they pulled it off, but they went in, and together they discovered that there was a terrible famine that was impacting hundreds of thousands of people. Dan took the first photos of this terrible famine, which were sent out via Reuters around the world. Those photos triggered a global response called Operation Restore Hope, initiated by the United States with United Nations help. Dan was so excited by the fact that, my goodness me, his photographs had instigated a global movement, that he stayed on in Somalia for the next 9-10 months, during which time the story changed drastically. It went from a story about a famine into a story that was deeply saddened by a terrible, terrible civil war. The country spiraled into a horrific civil war. Over this time, Dan went from being a pretty carefree young man who was enjoying his life to becoming someone who was deeply troubled by what he was seeing. I remember at one point he called me and told me a story about going to the morgue of the hospital, the horrible conditions of the hospital in Mogadishu, and seeing a beautiful young woman who was holding a baby, and a single shot had gone through both of them. And when he saw the young woman, he said it reminded him of his girlfriend, a lovely Somali girl named Nima. It broke his heart to see these sights, and it really broke his soul. I think he broke his heart open. It cracked it open, and he was very troubled by what he was seeing, and nervous and anxious, and it was a really desperately hard time. But he kind of got a grip and decided that he wanted to keep on telling important stories, and he went back into Somalia and became really the youngest photojournalist that Reuters had ever had, and I was so proud of him. But something terrible happened. And on July 12th, 1993, there was a terrible bombing by United Nations forces under American guidance of a house where they believed a warlord was hiding. But tragically, the warlord wasn't there, and they actually knew that. And instead of killing off the person they were trying to get, they killed 80 innocent people, men, women, children, including the old 90-year-old or 80-year-old imam of the mosque. They killed and wounded another 200 people. And it turned out that that was a peace meeting, a people who really wanted to try to bring peace to the country. They were fed up with the war. Dan and his friends were summoned to the site of the disaster by survivors who said, please, you have to tell the story. They went under guard. There were many guards around them. But when they got to the scene of the tragedy, it was covered with blood. There were wheelbarrowing people out. It was complete chaos and horror. And they started taking the photographs, and the people were so angry by what had happened that they shouted out, they're responsible. And of course, they weren't responsible. They were journalists who were coming to tell the story of what had happened. But they said they're responsible. And they beat, stoned, and shot the 4 journalists, killing them all. There was one survivor. I was in London I was in Los Angeles when I heard what had happened. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, and I got a call telling me that my son had been murdered by a mob. At the time, I knew a little bit about it. And I knew that the people were so enraged that they lashed out at whomever that was in front of them. And I understood what they did. I didn't like what they did. I hated what they did, but I understood what they did. So Dan, after he was killed, this triggered a completely new life for me, one that I'm excited to share with you. It took me from being an ordinary mom to being a crusader for people who are threatened by telling stories in the world. And I can't wait to tell you what happened next.
Wow. Kathy, I don't have the words to console you, to say to you. All I can say is I'm so sorry for your loss. It's so sad when you hear these stories firsthand from somebody who's experienced the pain and the loss and how history repeats itself, right? We're seeing the same story playing out in Iran right now, and you have lived through this, you've experienced it firsthand. What amazes me, though, is your ability to look at this with empathy, I guess, with understanding. How did grief reshape your understanding of purpose and identity?
Oh boy, thank you so much. I think I was purposeful in my life previously. I was a journalist. I was a mother. I believed in what I was doing, but I was all over the place. I think, I was telling stories of all kinds of people, and
Yeah.
and I didn't have a clear path where I was in my life. I had recently left my husband in Africa. I was finding a new direction as a filmmaker, but I was not focused. And I didn't know what I was really going to do next. And when Dan was killed, it was crystal clear what I had to do. And when we had the memorial service in Kenya, all the chiefs of Reuters and the Associated Press, who had lost two people, and no, one person. Reuters lost three people. The heads of those enormous news agencies were there, and I said to the head of Reuters, Mark Wood, I said, Mark, we have to transform the horror of this tragedy into a
Mhm.
powerful force for good. And Mark Wood, to his credit, said, I'll do whatever you say. And of course, I didn't have a clue what we were going to do, but I
Yeah.
had his support. And my initial mission was to create awareness of the role of a frontline journalist in peace and war. And we
Right.
did exhibits of Dan's work. We uh, did a number of films early on about Dan and his work. And then my daughter did a project at Boston University that was so interesting that it turned into the basis for a feature documentary called Dying to Tell the Story, which
Oh,
told
wow.
about Christiane Amanpour and all these cool journalists, and was nominated for an Emmy. So it was a complete new direction in my life, believe me.
So many people feel emotionally overwhelmed by the state of the world right now. What would you say to someone struggling to find hope?
I think that this is a period that will pass. I say
Mhm.
that because every day I struggle with exactly the same challenge. There's this
Yeah.
fire hose of horror that is threatening to overwhelm, engulf, drown, smother, swallow us all. And yet, if we stand back and look at history and look at the difficult times we'd had, whether it's, World War II, we think of Winston Churchill, never give in, never give in, never, never, never. Literally any time of crisis, we think it's the worst time in the world. And this feels like the worst time because it's a kind of a clatter of environmental issues and political issues and social issues and economic, everything seems to be going wrong all at once. But
Yeah.
I do have faith in the power of the human spirit to rise up, to seek, the moral arc. What I can't remember the exact quote, but it moves towards the good. And I
Yeah.
think that people have had about enough of narcissism and greed and a lack of empathy and compassion that is leaving us all on our knees, and particularly the less privileged people who are literally hopeless, helpless, despairing at this moment. And we
Yeah.
have to reconnect our heads and hearts so that we can together overcome the challenges that we're facing. We can't do it by ourselves.
Yeah. Now, you spent decades turning heartbreak into action. What kept you moving forward when the pain felt unbearable?
That's a beautiful question. I think for me, it was essential to put one foot in front of the other. And it sounds like I did these kind of rather grand projects. It can sound, but initially I could really barely get out of bed, or often, not really ever want to get out of bed again. I remember early on that there was a blissful period before you properly wake up that you didn't remember anything, and then you remembered what had happened, and then I didn't want to get up. And I remember years, or months, years of deep mourning. Out of it, I kept thinking we have to find meaning and purpose. So Amy and I, after the second year, when Dan wasn't coming back and we were missing him and we were forgetting him, we created something called Angel Catcher, a journal of loss and remembrance, which was initially something that I did with Amy. And then we presented it to a publisher, and they published the concept as a guided journal. It's still kind of a bestseller. But that led to a series of other books, guided journals of Soul Catcher and Love Catcher. That the documentary that we did led to a career in making documentaries. But always there was this mother grief, the mother sorrow. But I did not want, for the sake of Dan, to let it completely dissolve my sense of self and purpose. I know that there are some folks who literally cannot refine themselves following the loss of a child or a loved one. And that was not something that I knew Dan would want. And I've always felt a sense of his presence. I call it my noisy spirit. So I have a noisy spirit on my shoulder, and it's like, okay, I got to keep moving.
That's it. They're with us, despite the fact that they've gone in the physical sense. That is so beautiful. So what inspired you to co-found Creative Visions, and what impact has the organization had globally?
I'm really proud of Creative Visions. It emerged as a dream. I was at my lowest, and I had a dream of what Creative Visions would become. And I wrote it all down. I got the name Creative Visions. I got the logo, which is the I Ching. It's the ancient Chinese divination. I was able to create a purpose, which is to use the power of media to help people achieve their potential, both for themselves and the planet. So I started Creative Visions as a production company. We did lots of films. And then in 1998, we created Creative Visions as a foundation dedicated to supporting creative activists, storytellers like you, who are using that spark, that creative spark, to tell stories that need to be told, about problems that need to be solved, and get people off their backsides to actually do something. It's been
so beautiful.
It's been a grand adventure. What started in my upstairs bedroom of a tiny little condo in West Hollywood is now has probably touched 100 million people through the stories that have been told under our umbrella. We have 500 current projects under our fiscal sponsorship umbrella, and we have countless other projects that are under our youth empowerment program called Students Rebuild and hashtag Create Connect Care. So I'm really proud. I don't have to run it. We have a wonderful CEO named Pat Chandler who's doing all the hard work with our team.
Incredible. So why do you believe storytelling is one of the most powerful tools for social change?
Hey, it's what you do every day with your wonderful podcast. We are wired to tell stories and hear stories. We go back to sitting around a campfire somewhere as our Neanderthal relatives were just learning how to talk, presumably. But they came home from their hunting and shared stories of what happened. We are not very good at just like, oh, let me tell you the facts here. There were 2,822, we don't take that stuff in. But if I say, oh, there was this little girl, in Croatia who needed you're going to listen to me. That is the way we reach hearts and minds and move souls to take action. And you know that more than anybody, because that's what you're doing.
Yes, I absolutely love it. So what did spending 23 years bringing The Journey is the Destination to screen teach you about perseverance?
Oh my God, thank you. So The Journey is a Destination is a feature film that you can see on Amazon. It's an amazing film directed by a woman director, Bronwyn Hughes. It stars Ben Schnetzer as my son Dan, and it stars Maria Bello playing me. How cool is that? And it was based on Dan's book called The Journey is a Destination, which has sold like a couple 100,000 copies. But I moved to Hollywood in 1993 after Dan was killed, determined to make a feature film about my son and his friends. It was really about young journalists and young creative activists who wanted to help people. So I got a deal going pretty quickly with a Disney company, and then it fell apart. And then I got a deal going with Columbia Pictures, and then that fell apart. Anyway, I went on like that literally for 23 years, where Daniel Radcliffe would have been happy to play Dan, beautiful Daniel Radcliffe. I had, Julia Roberts was involved. We had the most incredible people involved along the way, but we never could quite get the people and the money together. So I kind of pretty much given up at a certain point, and I was thinking, well, this is just not going to happen in this lifetime. And then a dear friend of mine, Geraldine Dreyfus, came on board and brought other friends, and Trevor Hall, all these beautiful people came on board, and we were able to get the money together to do the film. And original budget was like 39 million. If we'd done it with the studio, we did it for very little in South Africa. With the producer was Kweku Mandela, who's Nelson Mandela's grandson. Can you imagine how lucky I was? And everybody was South African. We brought in only the heads of department and about, 6 or 7 actors. Everybody else was from South Africa. And I'm really proud of that aspect of it.
What a fantastic experience. So how can creativity help women reconnect with themselves after trauma, loss, or major life transitions, do you think?
Oh, boy. I think that's a wonderful question. For me, when I left my husband, it was such a horrible time. And the only thing that I think saved me was my journal. And I would journal and journal and journal. And I would, excuse me, I may sneeze. If I do, I'll just cut the sneeze out. I journaled my way to a vision of a new me. I drew my way to a vision of a new me. Initially, I could only draw these squiggly little lines of women floating in space. I don't know if I can find some in this book. I was just floating. I was not grounded at all. And, and the kind of, I don't know if you can see that, but the troubled aspect of me came out in these, what I would just call doodles. And I'm not, super talented at all. I just was doodling. But I doodled and doodled, and this was what I did right after Dan was killed, of grieving women. They're simple, they're crude, but the doodles helped me, and writing down what I was feeling, and then drawing pictures of what I wanted to be, and doodling my way so the characters could stand up on their own 2 feet, and then they were dancing, and then they were flying, But that really helped me. And we've since done 3 guided journals to help other people find their way through their creativity to the other side. And it's a continuous effort. I continue to doodle. I now can do some of it online. There are apps, that you can doodle online. But I'm surrounded by journals. There are probably 5 on my desk, even as we're speaking right now, that I can pick up and doodle.
That's just incredible. Now, what role does vulnerability play in leadership and activism, do you think?
You have the best questions. I think it is so critical to be authentic, to be real, to be expressive of what we're feeling. Obviously, as leaders, we have to be brave, and we have to try to lead even though we're terrified or uncertain. But I think to be a human is really important. And vulnerability along with humor, I think, are 2 very important things. Because if you're a leader, you've probably been through a hell of a lot. And sometimes we are not sharing that aspect of ourselves so that other people may not be able to see the humanity in certain leaders. And they bring with them maybe too much of their need to be, invulnerable. And maybe that happens a lot with women. I don't know. But I think I appreciate that question. I think I lean into it.
I love
For sure.
that. Now, you've authored 17 books.
So
How has
many.
writing helped you process the grief and to rediscover meaning in life?
Oh, thank you. I really always want to remind people that I'm ancient, and many of the books were little. I did a book making music in Kenya. It's still used in schools, but it's not a fat book. My books,
Yeah.
the only fat one was 400 pages for HarperCollins, which is my memoir, which is called In the Heart of Life. That took me 16 years to write. But the
Okay.
other books are eating out guides and cookbooks and journaling books, all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's a large number, but it's not like writing 17 history books. I'm always very humble about it. The most recent book, Boundless, came out of the horrible fires that we had here.
Oh,
Our home was saved miraculously by our neighbors, and our center was saved. But I was in a basement, a very nice basement in Manhattan Beach for 6 months while we waited to get back to our home, which is in a very toxic place in the burn area. And I wrote a book to remind me that I was boundless, that I wasn't confined by the circumstances of my life. And of course, I'm lucky. Many people in Gaza or in Sudan are confined by the circumstances of their life. But there is still the human spirit, the ability of the human spirit to see beyond those bounds. And it is not easy for people, particularly those in economic war. But it is just to remind us that we are, the power of the human spirit is unbreakable.
yeah.
You look at folks in concentration camps, how do we keep that human spirit alive and the spark flickering? And it is really hard. I know that.
Now, my last two questions for you are a bit of a thought experiment.
Oh
In
dear.
the first one, I'm going to teleport you back to the younger you, this young woman who lost her son in such a tragic way. If you could go back and give yourself three nuggets of wisdom, just in case there's a young mom who's listening to this podcast right now, she can't see the wood from the trees. What three nuggets of wisdom would you give the younger you?
Okay, I've just jotted them down. I would say, this too shall pass. At the time that we're going through the hard times, it feels like they never, ever, ever will pass. It's just, that's it. It's your life forever. And yet everything does pass. This too shall pass, over and over. Put it on your refrigerator. Do not forget that is temporary, and it may go on for way too long for you, but it will change. And the good stuff too. That's the other hard part, is to remember that the good things will also pass. We kind of hate that. The other thing to remember, I think, is the only way out is through. Often we can't go over or under or out. We have to go through the hard things, and that's a terrible thing to have to think about. And out of all of those, I would say never give in, never give in, never, never, never. And that's Winston Churchill. If you got those three, hey, you're golden.
I love it. They do say that the only constant in life is change. You're right. Nothing stays the same, good or bad. Life is an ebb and flow of good and bad.
Sadly, yes, it's the Tao, isn't it? The Tao, I think, is just the flow. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Hard to learn.
it is. Now, my last question is futuristic, and I'm going to teleport you into the future this time. And we are going to go and sit and have a conversation with a 90-year-old you. She's
Yeah.
sitting in her rocking chair with your energy. I can see you with science and technology on a dance floor doing something crazy.
Please, let's go there. Yeah.
If we
Yeah.
could teleport into the future to go and meet this wise woman who has led you up until this point, what will you say to her when you finally meet the 90-year-old you? Not ask her questions. What will you say to her?
Well, I just spent the past 4 days with a 96-year-old who is my mentor, my muse, my guide, my dearest friend. I flew to New York to be with her, and then I spent the next 4 days trying to keep up with her. So there's that she rocks. She's ready to rock, but there's certainly no rocking chair involved. And I was constantly inspired, impressed, intrigued, delighted by her curiosity, by her willingness to say, hell yeah. It's like, I heard the other day, if it's not hell no, then it's hell no. If it's not, oh, I can't remember. Forgive me. She wanted to be part of everything. And in fact, she was not just a part of everything. She became the center of everything because her 96 years had given her such authority and wisdom and humor that everybody wanted to be around her. So to that 96-year-old self that I would like to envision ultimately being, it's thank you. Thank you for being healthy enough to allow me to be on this journey for so long. Thank you for being there so that I could experience such extraordinary people like you along the way and learn from each and every person that I meet, whether it's like something I really wanted to learn or something that I maybe needed to learn. And to say thank you for, the joy and the sorrow. The sorrow comes often from how much love we put into someone, and if we don't have them anymore, that's a sorrow. But my God, I've been so fortunate, and I'm so grateful for this crazy, messy journey called life.
It is so beautiful. Yeah, I love to ask women this question, Kathy, because a lot of women don't even realize that the wise woman is already in us. That she is that quiet voice that says, say yes, say no, get up when you don't feel like getting up, keep going. She whispers. And a lot of times we look outside of ourselves for answers, for solutions. But it sounds to me you went inwards and you have really tuned into the energy of this woman and you are living her life to the full. You're one of those people who's squeezing all the juice the creator put in you.
I
You're
love what you're saying. Yeah, but I love what you said because it's really know thyself in Delphi, 2,000 years ago to 4,000, I don't know how many thousand years ago, the Oracle of Delphi, above it, it was know thyself. And it was like 3,000 years ago, I think. Know thyself and to thine own self be true. Shakespeare added that. But you listen inside, listen to that voice. And I call it also my noisy spirits, but there's guidance in and around us, and really listen in. And it's hard to rise above the noise often, but that inner self really does have a strong sense of what should happen. And you listen up, girl. Listen up.
I love it. Now, to finish off, is there anything else I should have asked you and I didn't?
What a beautiful question. I oh golly, listen to me. Oh yeah, I'm just going to say, be boundless, people. That's my latest message, and maybe it's the synthesis of everything that I've done in my life. But please don't limit yourself. Every day when I go to my wishing rocks or I do my meditation of prayer, whatever you want to call it, it's I will, thy will, whatever you want to call thy will, and let me not limit the possibilities. I never thought I would end up where I am on a beach, in the world that I inhabit. I never for 1,000 million years would have thought I would end up doing what I'm doing or being who I am. Please be boundless, okay?
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Kathy.
What
And
a
thank
pleasure.
you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We're a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share these stories to uplift you, to inspire you, to energize you, but most importantly, to help take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So if you are a woman, a parent who is experiencing grief right now, here's a story that can lift you, to show you that sit with the grief for a while. Like Kathy said, let it pass through you. The only constant in life is change. Good things are on the way. Or if you know someone who is going through a challenge, who's seeking inspiration today, please tag them on this video. Share this video on your social media so we can reach more people as well. I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody, with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Kathy, thank you again for this amazing interview.
I loved every minute. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye for now, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.
Wow, that was fun.